let's move on then just to look at some of the core business drivers of CLS adoption. And this is something that we see a lot. We've mentioned a couple of these already. It's this seamless transition from from a non-hybrid, like a fixed base configuration, to a hybrid or to a full cloud. Some clients skip the hybrid altogether and go full cloud, because why would you do the middleman? What I think is really important, though, is the ability to mix legacy and on-prem builds, but future-proof your DevOps operations. Because, again, to your point earlier, whether roles are being consolidated, which is classic, because in the current economic climate, the current business climate, everyone's being asked to do more with less, right? It's the way the world always goes. We all have it in our business lives. You can go the other way as well, though. Like, as I say, I see clients who, through M&A, they suddenly have 4 or 5 people that have overflowing roles and responsibilities, but with different skill sets, like a Venn diagram with like many, many layers. And then it's the question of, okay, who does what and who's responsible for what? So having a cohesive strategy to go and adopt a CLS approach, I think is going to be key. It can be key and is key. And in the middle here, we're talking about the flexibility and scalability. So, we mentioned it earlier actually, but different cloud providers, we very much see Azure as the number one. And I think it's because it's Microsoft, there's no question. Google, I think, Rob, you mentioned at the beginning, or certainly in the previous session we had, where we see Google coming up. I mean, if you asked me 2-3 years ago, Google was like 4 or 5. It's definitely, in my view, number 2. Do you guys see the same?
Yeah, and I think it's more around, be candid, a philosophy of a Microsoft shop and a non-Microsoft shop.
Yeah.
So I think when you hear Google, that typically is also a type of a customer that's leveraging things like Docker containers.
Yeah.
They're delivering their installers in a completely different way to kind of avoid or bypass maybe having to put their product in the Windows Store or having to, make a call to a Microsoft build machine, right? So we do see that.
And they're a bit more autonomous, right? Those kind of organizations, and they can be organizations within big organizations, right? Because that doesn't necessarily mean it's a small company. It might be a digital outfit within a big company.
Yeah, or really they don't have a whole catalog of products. They might just have their 2 flagship products, and they really do have a installation author who's also the build master, who might also be the application developer.
I was going to say, yeah, that's the classic, right? I mean, that's how I started my career, right? I was a C++ developer running some software, and I was tasked with evaluating installation products, right? There was InstallShield, there was the other one, right? The wise guys, okay? And well, there's no surprise for guessing how that ended. I chose InstallShield, and then 6 months later ended up working for InstallShield. So, but it was classic. It was, well, you're the developer, you must know how to write installers. Well, not really, but hey, let's give it a go. And, and that still happens today, I think. It really does.
Yeah, and I think it's that flexibility, because again, I don't know what you're seeing in your world as to the most common provider. We think it's Azure, but in practice, it's some just don't know, and they also don't want to make that decision. So when you introduce that, you do what you need to do. And you pivot when you need to do it. If you acquire another company and you now have to use Azure or Google or whatever, you don't need to repurchase new technology or things of that nature. So that's what we mean by the flexibility. And even more, when you have that flexibility, you increase your usage and you start to see where else could you take advantage of the functionality. And then it starts to really open the aperture on how you can take full advantage of the solution, which really helps other. How do you decide what products should I upgrade and move to a cloud, or which ones do I need to keep in hey, this is going to stay in its legacy mode. We're going to leave it there.
There's so many influences, right? I mean, it'll be cost, client importance, what the CTO wants to do, right? and joking aside, there are companies that we see, I'm sure you do, where there's just a preference, right? Obviously, the Microsoft, non-Microsoft is classic, right? It's been there in IT for decades. I think the other important point would be to say that rarely do I see clients who are just one of those 3. They're usually a few of them, and at least 2 of them anyway.
So that actually has me thinking about another thing, Crispin, that probably is related is code signing. There's so many
Right.
different ways you can do the code signing that does it all standardize on the most current, or is some using the older stuff? You may not want to upgrade an old installer and
Mm,
take advantage of the latest code signing, support and functionality.
mm,
Other products
mm.
you might have to. There could be industry regulations that require this.
Yeah.
So like how often are you seeing code signing between new technology and old technology and influencing customers and what they need to do?
Do you know what? It's an interesting question. So it's important for those for whom it's important, and for those who don't care about it, it doesn't even enter their radar. So it's it's that classic topic of it's always been a little bit of a pain to do,
Hmm.
right? Whether you've had a PFX file, you've embedded it in your installer, whether you've used an external certificate wrapper. Remember back in the days of the latest Windows versions when all the default settings, for example, in enterprise were it had to be signed, right? There was one point it had to be signed to be deployed,
Hmm.
and then we had Windows Defender, we had BitLocker, we have user access control, all those things that were just noise in front of us. We see, on that topic of security, we see the clients for whom that is important looking to almost try and do that in house, actually, build it into the app itself rather than do certificate wrapping. Because while certificate wrapping on the surface is straightforward enough, it's something else to manage. It's something else that expires. It's something else to track. So I think to the premise of optimization and usability, I think you're seeing it much, much less important than it used to be.